We will go with bills previously heard. The one that we'll start with will be House Bill 2119, eliminating the Kansas Affordable Housing Tax Credit Act. And Senator Owens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 2119, I do have an amendment. Oh, overview. You want to have Amelia
Yes, we
do
will.
an overview first?
Yes.
There you go.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, House Bill number 2119, as amended by the House Committee, would discontinue the Kansas Affordable Housing Tax Credit Act on July 1st, 2025, except as provided for certain allocations. The Kansas Affordable Housing Tax Credit Act provides for income privilege and premium tax credits for qualified developments in an amount equal to the amount of federal tax credit, the Section 42 low-income housing tax credit, allocated by KHRC to such qualified development commencing with tax year 2023. The bill would discontinue the act on July 1st, 2025, but committee amendments clarified that with respect that the tax credit period and any applicable carry forward period would continue to apply for those allocations that were made, including the 2025 qualified allocation plan. And then it would also provide that no allocation of credit shall be awarded by the KHRC pursuant to the act after the 2025 qualified allocation plan. And the bill passed the House February 20th on a vote of 85 to 36.
Any questions or comments? Senator Owens, did you have a amendment?
I do. I have an amendment. Amelia, if we could get that handed out. Sorry, I do have an amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So while this is being handed out, I can tell you that it is a pretty straightforward amendment. I have heard from many people in my district who acknowledge that they feel like this is an important program. And knowing what I know now, I'm just not at a place that I'm 100% comfortable eliminating it altogether. And so what my amendment does is reduces it to only allow for the 9% credits and stop the funding of the 4% tax credits. And I'm happy to get into the differences between those if anybody has any questions. What this will ultimately do is reduce the fiscal impact to the state by about 70%. So I will stand for questions.
Thank you. Senator Reichman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you for bringing this amendment. I, too, have concerns how successful everybody was jumping in on this this bill, because we had a lot of housing being across the state that was going, and we need a lot more, that's for sure. And I think this is a nice compromise, and thank you for bringing it.
Senator Blue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When the time comes, I'd love to second the motion. I also agree with this. I think that this is a great compromise. I have had a project in my district and just seeing how successful it's been. And it's been a situation where I struggle, and I made this comment when we were working when we heard the bill, was the definition of affordable housing. I think we all have a different definition of what affordable housing is and so forth, but this is better than nothing. And we all have a housing shortage. If you don't have a housing shortage in your district, I'd like to know why, because we all are having a housing shortage. And so I appreciate this amendment and I full-heartedly support it. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Yes, Senator Titus.
Just briefly, could I get a reminder on the difference between the 9% and the 4% programs?
Yes, Senator Owens.
Yeah, certainly. So the 4% program is a 4% tax credit spread over 10 years. And then they, in essence, the benefit to the 4% is the credit is less because it allows tax exempt bonding. to actually bond out the financing needed to build them. Whereas the 9% is a pure tax credit that, again, it goes out 10 years but is also pulled back, but there's no specialized financing that exists along with it, that the government kind of provides that tax exempt financing for the project. So that's why it's a different percentage.
Any other comments or questions? Yes, Senator Tyson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, but this doesn't put a ceiling on or a sunset on, correct? Your amendment.
Senator Owens.
Yeah, that is correct. This simply restricts it down, and based on the historical numbers, again, this will cut about 70% of the funding out of the current process going forward.
Senator.
Do we have a spreadsheet on those out years?
I do have one. I did not attach it to the amendment. I would be happy to see if I can pull that up and get that shared in short order, however, if you would like to.
Well, go ahead and see if you can do that. Well, if there are any other comments or questions on this one? Wait for just a moment till it gets the spreadsheet.
My apologies, Mr. Chair, that I don't have this readily in front of me. I certainly don't mind if we pass over this one and move on to another one while I can get that, if that is your preference, because I don't believe we have a motion or a second quite yet on it, but I do have that spreadsheet and can get it.
Okay, just a moment. We don't have a motion, but I want to ask a question of you.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Senate Bill 229 pertains to legislative oversight of occupational licensing requirements set forth in agency rules and regulations or in statute. The bill would provide for the termination of currently existing occupational licensing requirements, with certain exceptions contained in either statutes or rules and regulations, on July 1, 2030, unless the legislature renews such requirements by passage of a joint resolution. Statutory or regulatory occupational licensing requirements enacted or adopted after the effective date of the bill, which would be July 1st of 2025, terminate after 5 years from their effective date, unless continued again by the legislature via joint resolution. Agency rules and regulations that adopt occupational licensing requirements on or after July 1st, 2025 require legislative approval by joint resolution prior to becoming effective. The bill would provide a procedure for notification of pending termination dates of occupational licensing requirements by the Secretary of State for licensing requirements contained in rules and regulations, and by the Reviser of Statutes for such requirements that are found in statute. The bill sets forth the process for review by the legislature, including referral to relevant committees of each chamber, a report and presentation by legislative research staff to each committee, and a written recommendation by each committee to the legislature.
Thank you. Any questions? Discussion on that one? And Senator Owens, I understand you may have another amendment.
I do, Mr. Chair. This is an amendment that was handed to me quite literally just before I walked in the room. This is compromise language where the Secretary of State and others worked with the proponents of this bill.
Pass one out.
Yeah, how about we pass that out?
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm still on the previous one, just trying to keep it all together. So while this is being handed out on this bill, pretty extensive changes, but let me just share what the top four of those are. First, the legislature no longer reviews the existing licensing. However, the legislature would approve new or material licensing. It does remove the cities and the counties, which again, the primary reason for that is recognizing like cities and counties actually licensed, for example, contractors, and it would create a huge significant challenge. And then each agency self-reports on licensing. So again, this is an amendment that was agreed to by all parties involved.
Are there any questions? Yes, Senator Corson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I remember, and I just pulled it up to refresh my memory, that during the hearing on this bill, we heard from our grain and feed and agribusiness communities about some concerns that they had. Do you know if this amendment addresses those concerns, if they're part of this compromise?
I'm being indicated that, sorry, Mr. Chairman, yes, I'm being told that they are.
Thank you. I appreciate that information. Thank you very much.
Any other comments? Questions? Okay. Senator Owens?
I would move my amendment that you have in front of you.
Do we have a second? Second by Senator Reichman. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So we're back on the bill. Senator Owens.
If there's no other discussion, Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion that we pass out Senate Bill 229 as amended favorably.
Do we have a second? Second by Senator Blue. Any discussion? Yes, Senator Titus, excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just in general, when I read through this, it seems like for new licenses, in most cases, this doesn't cover the material change, but we've authorized creation of the licenses. You can't just create a license out of the blue. It seems to have a little bit of duplication of what we're already authorizing in bills. If somebody wants to address that, that's fine, but just in looking through it, that'd be my concern is adding reports and work and things like that. I just want to grasp what we're gaining by having to double check our work after the fact.
Senator Owens, do you have any comment?
Nothing specific. If there's a specific question or concern that you have in there, I'd certainly be happy to review it and address it to the best of my ability.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any other comments or questions? No comments or questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Chair is unsure. Ayes? Hold your hand. Raise your hand. Opposed? Same sign. Motion carries 5-4. Thank you. We're moving on then back to House Bill 2119. 2119. Senator Owens. Have you got any?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do. I emailed that out. I've requested that my assistant actually bring hard copies down as soon as she possibly can. But it has been emailed out to all members of the committee for their perusal, if they have their laptops with them. If not, we can certainly wait until Colette makes it down. There you go.
Is there any other questions or waiting on this one?
I did. I sent it to the Commerce Secretary.
Okay. Senator Blue?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Owens, I'm looking at it and I'm on the 8.8 tab. My question is, what are we, I mean, I understand where you're coming from, but I just want to make sure it's clear to everybody. What year are we currently in?
So under the current bill, we will have authorized the funding through year 3. So year 1 and 2, and we're in the middle of 3, so we need to finish 3. And then you can see in year 4 where that 8.8 starts on E6, and then how it changes the trajectory all the way down.
Thank you. I want to double check because that's how I understood it, but I didn't create the spreadsheet, so I wanted to make sure that we were on the same page. I think it's very telling that those, when you can pull it up and look at it, the drastic difference between year 3 and 4 and moving forward on 25 million, 31 million, 30 million to 8.8 million. It's a huge difference, and I appreciate something better than repealing the whole entire program, and so I thank you for bringing this amendment.
Any other questions? Senator Owens, if there's no questions?
Everybody has had a chance to review it. I'm happy to make a motion. Okay. I move the amendment as has been provided to you for, let's see, House Bill 2119.
Do I have a second? Second by Senator Blue. Any discussion? Yes, Senator Tyson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The House stopped the bleed with what they sent us. This limits the bleed, not stops it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor of House Bill 2119 as amended?
The amendment.
Oh, just, the amendment, excuse me, amendment. Of the amendment, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Now we're back on the bill. Is there any further discussion on the bill? Yes, Senator Tyson.
Mr. Chairman, I think I'm one of the few in this body that is actually concerned about our spending in the out years. And you may not see it, you may not understand it. I didn't vote for this legislation initially, and there were reasons. Because of the obligation that it's putting the state under. I would try to sunset this. I don't think it would pass with this committee. I just think that the more we do programs like this, the less that we can cut taxes for our constituents. And I know that is a fact because I've studied the numbers. I have looked at the numbers. It's not an overnight knee-jerk reaction. I mean, look in the out years with this, what we just passed. You're putting the state in year 11, in year 10, $148 million obligation for the state of Kansas. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Tyson, you said you wouldn't bring that amendment to sunset it, but if you did, what would your suggestion be?
So, Mr. Chairman, thank you for the question. We are looking at, and thankfully Senator Corson and others brought legislation this year on forming a committee to study this and to demonstrate how this is impacting the state of Kansas. Because, and I just, of course, you guys know I want tax relief for all our constituents. But the more we keep picking winners and losers with these programs, we continue to tie our hands as to tax relief in the future. And yes, I do know that housing is an issue. This started out as a rural program. And if you look, most of the construction is going in urban areas. It's in Johnson County, Sedgwick County. And those are the ones that are clamoring the loudest to keep this program going. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any further discussion? Yes, Senator Clamp.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I appreciate Senator Tyson's comments. She had mentioned something about a cap, and I didn't know if we had talked about that. And I would say that the two counties that I represent do actively use this program, and it is very helpful. But I think that her point about cap might be worth paying attention to if she had some additional comments there.
Yes, Senator Tyson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just leave it to the body to take a look at the spreadsheet that was handed out and make a reasonable suggestion on a limit. But we do put limits. The Rural Opportunity Zone has a $10 million limit. Other tax credits, we've seen what happened with Peak. It was being interpreted wrong years ago. It had a I think it's a $6 or $7 million. Now they've increased it because they were interpreting the law wrong. HPIP doesn't have a cap on it. That program absolutely should. Over $3 billion were handed out in 2018 and 2020 on HPIP. And so I just think that we should be realistic on these programs. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any further comments or questions? Make the motion. No other comments.
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I do understand the concerns of the out year and the consideration of a cap even. So by doing this, by creating this amendment and passing this bill across the floor, we'll end up in conference where maybe that's something that we can certainly take into consideration. And so, Mr. Chairman, I move that we pass out HB 2119 as amended favorably.
Do I have a second? Second by Senator Blue. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We have one other bill that we have heard previously, and I'm not sure you may have a copy of it, but House Bill 2343. That's the no-impact house-based business. Yeah, we heard it just the other day, 12. Heard it on the 12th, I think. Yes, we will as soon as she finds it.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, House Bill number 2343, as amended by the House Committee, would create the No Impact Home-Based Business Fairness Act to limit the regulatory power of municipalities relating to certain home-based businesses. As you'll recall, there were two types of businesses defined, the no-impact home-based business and the rural no-impact home-based business. And I'd be happy if there's further questions that you'd like. The provisions would provide that the business is defined by no-impact home-based business and rural no-impact home-based business would be considered a permitted use, and that municipalities, and that was defined as a city, county, or a consolidated city and county, shall not prohibit such businesses or require registration or permits, licenses, variances, and other types of prior approval to operate such businesses.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Committee, what is your wishes on this bill? Senator Titus.
Mr. Chair, I have an amendment. If the revisor could pass out the amendment related to the estate fire marshal. So if you'll turn to page 3, you'll see a straightforward strike through. I had got into a line of questioning with the League of Municipalities and the State Fire Marshal about an impact on fire code. It was this particular language about any residential dwelling consisting of more than 2 dwelling units. Apparently that conflicts with the fire code in state statute that we've adopted. So this is just simply removing that to avoid any issues down the road. So I'd move the amendment.
Any questions on the amendment? Seeing none, you may move your amendment. Oh, wait a minute, you have a question over there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As somebody who is a family business that owns fire protection, help me understand, right now you do not have to have fire protection in a single family home. If it's a 4-plex or more, you have to. So why are we not striking single family?
Senator Tyson?
My understanding, this is what the fire marshal had issue with.
Just
It's okay with the rest, so.
just the duplex situation.
Yes, Senator.
I don't know that it's. I'm not sure I understand the question well enough.
I will support this amendment, but I have a couple other questions. I think it could be figured out in conference. I want to make sure that I'm understanding what's going on. If we don't pass this amendment, then it doesn't go to conference. And so I would be interested in passing this amendment, but to understand what the fire marshal's issue was with it. Because there is an issue, I guess, yeah. I'll support this, but I have a couple questions.
Senator Tyson.
Mr. Chairman, could we hold off on this one until tomorrow, or is it urgent we pass it today?
We weren't planning on working tomorrow, but we could.
I think it would give everybody time to research it and visit about the issue.
What? Let me see what. Okay, so this is from the fire marshal's testimony. Municipalities shall not require a person as a condition of operating a no-impact home-based business or rural no-impact-based business to seek rezoning of the property for commercial use or install fire sprinklers in a single-family detached residential dwelling. Any residential dwelling consisting of more than 2 dwelling units or any additional building on the property. That is from, yes, you do.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, again, I'm looking at the State Fire Marshal's written testimony that was provided on March 12th, if you're looking for it. My understanding of his written testimony here is that the language in the bill on page 3 that excludes any residential dwelling consisting of more than 2 dwelling units is inconsistent with state statute regarding fire protection. And so for clarity, he would prefer that provision alone be stricken so that the state law does not have a conflict.
Questions?
Mr. Chair, I don't have any questions. I don't disagree with the fire marshal. I just have a couple questions that I will talk to him offline to make sure I understand correctly. Again, I support the amendment moving forward, but I'm pulling up fire code right now just to fully understand. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a question in regards to a type of a business that, as I was reading this, if I understood this correctly in section 4, there's no permits that are required or licenses required. And one of the questions that I had is take an auto mechanic.
On the amendment first.
Glad I get ahead of myself there, sir. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on the amendment? Okay. Do we have a second on the amendment? Who seconded the amendment? Okay. Second by Senator Owens. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Now we're back on it. Now, Senator Clinton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Section 4, which does not require a permit, and I was using the example of a home-based auto small business. We had one of the conferees talk to that, and knowing some home-based businesses that also play in the same space, I was curious if they don't have to have a license or a permit that doesn't require any type of inspection or fire, one of the other topics we're talking about with fire protection, and you are working on vehicles and flammables in that space, is that type of business allowed under this, and would they be required to have licenses and still have similar inspections?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I don't know if I can answer that specifically, but I can tell you that if you read section 5 of the bill, municipalities are still able to establish and enforce regulations over these types of businesses for purposes of protection of public health and safety, as well for purposes of fire and building codes and health and sanitation and hazardous waste and those types of items.
In section 5, I would read that as it is covered. They could be, if the city determines they should be accountable, they can hold them accountable to those regulations.
If the municipality establishes and enforces regulations that are narrowly tailored for these purposes.
That answers my question. Thank you.
Senator Owens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also have an amendment. Can we get that handed out, Amelia? This is the exempting animals. As this is being handed out, I'll explain it simply. That's right. Yep, sorry. Basically, what this does is this excludes from the definition of home-based business the breeding of animals and then the hosting or operating short-term rentals. Those were both brought to my attention as specific concerns, and at the request of the author of the bill, suggested that these be exempted from the definition of a home-based business. And I'll go ahead and move that amendment.
we have any questions or concerns? Senator Tyson?
If I may, on the amendment, so you're saying that you cannot breed animals in your apartment complex?
Right, so as it relates to the bill itself, the no impact home-based business bill, this excludes those items from a home-based business. So yes, they would still be able to be regulated as they are currently. They would be specifically pulled out of these looser regulations.
Senator Owens, would that be if they had, let's say, a dog or a cat, and they had puppies, or that would not be included because you're not a business, is that right?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman. We're specifically dealing with dog or animal breeders that do that as a form of income, not just as a one-off hobby.
Any other comments or questions? Yes, Senator Corson.
Thank you. Well, no, sorry, let's dispose. I'm sorry, I had a more general, I want to dispose of the amendment. Thank you. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
Okay, we have a second. We need, okay, where's, question on the amendments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Would Section 5 as well address the VRBO type of a question, or would that allow the cities to already hold those groups accountable for short-term rentals?
I think arguably it would, because you're dealing with the protection of public health and safety. And so arguably it would, spelling that out and pulling it out, because it's not, although the home itself is the business, it is not a home-based business, I suppose is the best way to put it. So I would think that it would, but this just specifically pulls it out of there.
Any other questions? Senator Reichman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and for the author of the amendment. I haven't rented in such a long time. Well, short-term rentals, what do we really mean by that? And how do we, if you're in a short-term rental? Thank you.
That's a great question, Senator. So short-term rentals are like your Airbnbs, where somebody puts their house up to be rented, similar to how you would get a hotel room for the night. You could rent a house for the night. So that's what we're talking about there, is short-term rentals.
Any other questions? No other questions? Do we have a second? Yes. Senator Tyson seconds. Any other discussion? Yes, Senator Ware.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I was willing to second this as well. It makes a tough bill a little bit better. I could go on to say that I've gotten more emails on this bill, with or without the amendment, than just about anything this year, and not one of them was in favor of it. Not one.
Any other comments or questions? Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Well, committee, first, oh, yes.
Any further discussion?
Any further discussion? Yes, Senator Tyson.
So we refer to homeowners association, and I'm looking, and we have a Owner's Bill of Rights Act, but it really doesn't define. Is there somewhere in statute where we define what a homeowners association is? I guess being from a town of 200 people, we don't have to worry about that.
I'll ask. Do we have any comments or questions? There'd have to be some research, what you said on that one. Have to do some research. Okay. Any further discussion? Yes, Senator Corson.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I do appreciate the amendment and think it makes the bill better, but I'm still going to be opposed to this. For me, I represent 10 cities. the same 74,000 constituents that all of us do. And I just don't feel that this bill is really addressing a real problem. I just haven't heard from many, if any, constituents over the 5 years I've been in the Senate that this is really an issue that needs to be solved legislatively at the state level. Haven't really heard from any of my 10 cities that this is an issue that needs to be solved legislatively at the state level that they're not able to appropriately address. So for me, the combination of not hearing from my residents and not hearing from my cities, again, I just kind of question the necessity of this bill in general. If you think and look back even to the testimony that we heard, that couple from Lenexa who wanted to operate the small engine repair business, seemed like a great couple, great people. They ultimately weren't given permission to operate that business, but they were certainly given a lot of process. I mean, they went through multiple rounds of process with the city of Lenexa going back and forth. So it wasn't like they didn't have a chance to present their case. Ultimately, I think the city decided that they didn't want to have that small engine repair business in the middle of a residential neighborhood. And that was, to me, I think best left as a question for those cities. So I'm going to be a no on this. I think these are questions that our cities are really capable of handling. And again, not having heard complaints from residents that they're not being properly handled. So that'll make me a no on this, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Motion's been made and seconded. Not yet?
I'll make one.
I thought, okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that we pass out House Bill 2343 as amended favorably.
Do we have a second? Do we have a second? Okay. Senator Tyson. Titus, excuse me. I'll get it right in a minute. Motion been made and seconded by Senator Tyson. Anything else? Any other questions? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
We will, okay, all in favor, hold your hand. Opposed? Motion fails. Thank you. We are, for all intents and purposes, complete with the Commerce Committee this year, but I think what we've had is an excellent staff that have done a great job for us. Thank you very much, staff. We do appreciate all the hard work you did for us. Committee, thank you for your hard work. We appreciate the Commerce Committee, what they've done, and we may be, I think, for all intents and purposes, this is the last meeting. We will not be meeting tomorrow. So thank you very much. And we are adjourned.